I would turn down hooking up with the finest girl in town over a gang fight. I loved to fight.
Okay.
I loved it like you would not believe.
The silver screen once exalted Michael Jai White as a legend, a true martial artist, the first black actor to don the costume of a Hollywood superhero. A man with 7 black belts, fists of steel, an image of invincibility. Yet behind the rippling muscles and dazzling glory, lurk shadows that left the world stunned. A rebellious childhood, a shocking secret at the age of 15, a marriage shattered by infidelity, fierce verbal battles with colleagues, and the unbearable pain of losing his son to COVID-19. Each fragment of life is a crack, each story a blade slashing into the flawless image. Michael Jai White, a hero on screen, but in real life, what horrors lie hidden? Do you dare uncover his darkest secrets? The glory and the fateful punches. If one only looks at the explosive action scenes, few would imagine that behind the spotlight, Michael Jai White had walked a long, rugged, and tumultuous path. He was not only an action star, but also a martial artist with 7 black belts, a number that even the masters of the craft must respect. Yet the road that carried him from a poor boy in Brooklyn to an international star was anything but smooth. And it was this very life, with every fall and every role, that forged a Michael Jai White whom Hollywood both revered and feared. Michael Richard Jai White was born on November 10, 1967 in Brooklyn, New York, one of the harshest neighborhoods in America at the time. Growing up where violence and street crime were daily realities, White was forced to find a way out. At the age of 7, he stepped into a martial arts class for the first time. No one knew this would mark the beginning of a dazzling career spanning more than 4 decades. Throughout his childhood, White trained relentlessly and soon displayed exceptional talent. He steadily advanced in rank, eventually earning black belts in multiple disciplines: Shotokan Karate Goju Ryu, Karate Taekwondo Kobudo, Tang Sudo Wushu, and even Jiu-Jitsu. In total, he holds 7 black belts, a rare achievement proof of his willpower and unwavering dedication to martial arts. Before finding his way into cinema, White worked as a martial arts instructor. He didn't just teach technique, but also inspired students to avoid the street violence he had witnessed so often as a child. This work helped him refine his ability to communicate and express emotions, perhaps unknowingly laying the foundation for his future acting career. By the late 1980s, Hollywood began searching for fresh faces in the action genre. With his solid physique and real combat skills, White quickly caught the eye of producers. His first role may have been small, but it was enough to open the door. Just a few years later, fate delivered the breakthrough, portraying boxing legend Mike Tyson in the 1995 television film Tyson. Standing 6'1" tall with bulging muscles, an intense gaze, and a powerful presence, White embodied Iron Mike so convincingly that both audiences and critics had to nod in approval. This role marked the turning point that brought Michael Jai White into the spotlight. 2 years later, White made history again by starring in Spawn 1997. The film may not have received critical acclaim, but it carved a landmark in cinematic history. Michael Jai White became the first black actor to portray a comic book superhero on the big screen. At the time, this carried special meaning, as Hollywood still carried heavy prejudice against casting black actors in leading roles. Though its box office returns were modest, Spawn etched White's name into film history as a trailblazer. In the early 2000s, White continued to appear in popular action films. He teamed up with Steven Seagal in Exit Wounds 2001, then starred in Undisputed 2: Last Man Standing 2006, one of the most beloved martial arts films of that era. In 2011, he made waves again with Never Back Down 2. The beatdown this time not only as an actor, but also as director. The film became a favorite among young martial arts enthusiasts. Perhaps, however, the work considered iconic in White's career is Black Dynamite 2009, an action comedy parodying the 1970s blaxploitation style. White not only played the lead, but also co-wrote and produced the film. Black Dynamite was hailed as both thrilling and hilarious, proving that White was not only about fists and kicks, but also possessed creativity and versatility. Over his career, Michael Jai White has appeared in more than 90 films and television series. He has worked alongside stars such as Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, and Wesley Snipes, and even appeared in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight 2008, though it was only a supporting role, Gamble, a Gotham crime boss. White left a strong impression in his face-off with Heath Ledger's Joker. Even in his 50s, White shows no signs of slowing down. He continues to take on action roles while also venturing into directing and producing. More importantly, he remains dedicated to training the younger generation teaching martial arts as he once did back in Brooklyn. To fans, he embodies the perfect blend of a stern martial arts master and a captivating action star. His glory comes not only from the punches and kicks on screen, but also from the way he overcame adversity to prove himself. From a poor Brooklyn boy to an international action icon, Michael Jai White's journey stands as a testament to willpower and perseverance. But as you will soon see, that is only half the story. For behind the dazzling lights, behind the breathtaking fight scenes, lie secrets and shadows that even his most loyal fans could never have imagined. The secret of youth: becoming a father at 15. Imagine this, a 15-year-old boy caught between school and the dojo, suddenly thrust into a situation no one could ever prepare for. In an interview with Vlad TV, White admitted that he once had as many as 14 girlfriends at the same time during high school, a lifestyle of recklessness and rebellion rarely seen. But the real shock came when he revealed that at 15 he had his first child. The mother was only 19 at the time, 4 years older than White. Legally, this could be considered statutory rape. White was blunt. If the law had been strictly applied, the mother of my son could have been taken to court. This revelation stunned the public. A teenager still in school, barely finding his own identity, suddenly became a father. In 1980s, America, for a black teenage boy to have a child was already an unbearable pressure. Yet White did not run from it. He openly shared the truth many years later when he was already a star as a way of confronting himself. What made the story even more haunting was the tragedy that followed. That son, the result of youthful passion, grew up with many hardships, struggling with temptations and addiction. And in 2021, at only 38 years old, he died of COVID-19. White recalled through tears that the virus was only the final blow, as his son's body had long been weakened by years of destructive living. This painful truth revealed a vicious cycle: youthful recklessness leading to fatherhood too early, only to later witness his child lose his way and die far too young. Looking back, Michael Jai White at 15 was just a boy focused on martial arts to escape the shadow of Brooklyn's street violence. He wasn't mentally prepared, financially stable, or in any way ready to be a father. Yet fate forced the burden on him. Imagine on one side the dojo, where he trained daily to become a champion. On the other, the cry of an infant, a reminder that he could no longer remain a carefree boy. This secret not only shocked the public, but also revealed the intense contradictions in Michael Jai White's image on screen. He was the muscle-bound, invincible hero. Off-screen, he had once been a confused teenager struggling under the weight of fatherhood. It raises the question, did the iron discipline of his martial arts, training, the calmness in his acting, all stem from the shock of becoming a father at 15? Did White turn fear into fuel, driving himself to become the action star who commanded Hollywood's attention? Michael Jai White once shared that becoming a father so young had completely changed who I was. It forced him to grow up faster, to look at life with greater responsibility. But at the same time, it was also a wound he carried for life. Losing his son at 38 was not only a personal tragedy, but also a brutal reminder of the choices made in youth. Today, when people look back, they no longer see only Michael Jai White shining in Spawn Undisputed 2 or Black Dynamite. They also see a man who once teetered between youth and responsibility, a father who endured the heartbreak of losing his child. And that secret at 15, though bitter, helped shape the blunt, gritty, and resilient character we know in White today. A star may hide scandals, but he cannot erase the scars of youth. For Michael Jai White, the first punch he ever took was not in the ring, but the fateful blow of destiny, making him a father while still just a boy. And that was the dark secret that opened the door to the shocking stories of his life: infidelity and a noisy divorce. If at 15 he was forced into fatherhood before he was ready, then in adulthood, White once again faced turbulence in his personal life. This time, not just responsibility, but scandal, infamy, and a loud divorce that Hollywood tabloids exploited to the fullest. In 2005, White married obstetrician-gynecologist Courtney Chapman, a successful intellectual woman seen as a solid anchor for him. To the public eye, it was a perfect match: a rising action star and a thriving doctor. They appeared together at numerous events, projecting the image of a power couple. People believed White had finally found a peaceful harbor after a stormy youth. Yet only 6 years later, everything collapsed. In 2011, White and Chapman divorced. The news shocked audiences, but what truly stunned them were the rumors surrounding the cause. Several entertainment outlets, including Rolling Out, reported that White had been unfaithful with Claudia Jordan, a former model and well-known television host. The rumor suggested that the affair lasted up to 3 years, with White abandoning the wife who had stood by him to chase a new spotlight. Claudia Jordan, a familiar face in American showbiz, was known not only for her beauty, but also for appearances on popular TV shows. Photos of White and Jordan together at events, even collaborating on certain artistic projects, only fueled speculation that the relationship was more than gossip. Tabloids called it a bitter blow for Chapman. The woman believed to have supported White from his early career financially and emotionally. White never publicly admitted to the affair, but his silence only made the scandal louder. In Hollywood, where every word is scrutinized, silence often equates to acceptance. Thus, the image of the family man White had once built began to crumble before the public eye. The failed marriage also brought with it legal battles over assets and custody. Media leaks suggested that Chapman played the leading role in initiating the divorce, while White mostly avoided confrontation. Few official details were released, but the public spun countless tales from White being ambitious and ungrateful to Jordan, being the other woman who broke into the marriage. What stood out was the timing of the scandal, exactly when White was solidifying his Hollywood career. After Spawn, he had multiple major projects, but the noisy divorce tainted his image. Producers became more cautious, and the press increasingly linked his name to scandal rather than talent. In Hollywood, sometimes a scandal can hit harder than a punch, and White knew this well. Still, just as he once rose from the struggles of age 15, White chose silence, threw himself into work, and continued acting. He didn't write a memoir to justify himself, nor did he grant lengthy interviews about the affair. Instead, he let his roles speak for him. Over time, the scandal faded, but the memory of a marriage destroyed by betrayal remained etched into the record of Michael Jai White's private life. Years later, after remarrying actress Jillian Ileana Waters-White, mentioned briefly in an interview that some lessons can only be learned at a very heavy cost. The short remark, vague yet telling, was enough to remind audiences of that turbulent marriage. It was perhaps his discreet way of acknowledging that the past still lingered as an unhealed scar. The irony lies in the fact that on screen, White often portrayed strong, devoted men willing to sacrifice everything for love and family. Yet in real life, he had once been trapped in the opposite cycle: betrayal, scandal, and loss. The gap between his cinematic image and his real-life struggles had never been clearer. In retrospect, that marital secret was not just a scandal of the past. It reflected a facet of White's nature, passionate, intense, yet easily swayed by temptation. And like an action film full of dramatic twists, White's life added another unexpected turn, from model husband to the leading figure in a Hollywood love drama. Through it all, Michael Jai White still rose, continued his career, and retained the love of his fans. But the lingering question remains, echoing like a punch to memory. Were those first cracks in his marriage the warning bell for the many tragedies yet to come? The pain of losing a son to COVID-19. There are wounds that never heal, no matter how much time passes. For Michael Jai White, that wound bears the name of his eldest son, the child born when he was only 15 and gone suddenly at 38 because of COVID-19. A family tragedy, but also a shocking secret few fans knew about. Imagine this: a father who has fought countless battles on screen, throwing hundreds of punches to defeat enemies, yet powerless when faced with the invisible foe of a virus. In a conversation with Vlad TV, White choked up as he revealed that his son had been hospitalized for an extended period, his health already weakened after years of addiction. COVID was merely the final cold, merciless strike. It's like the disease had just been waiting, and when my son's body couldn't take it anymore, it struck, White said. The pain was compounded by the context. This was the very son who had been the result of White's secret at 15. As a teenager, he became a father. For years, White tried to provide and watch over him, but the young man's life veered in another direction. Consumed by temptations, trapped in the spiral of substance abuse, his body wore down day by day. For a father, watching his child self-destruct is a torment beyond words. When the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, the entire world was shaken. But for White, the tragedy didn't remain a global fear. It struck right inside his family. His son passed at 38, an age when life should still be full of promise. White confessed that the loss felt like a direct punch to the heart, more painful than any action scene he had ever endured. American media did not sensationalize the death as White chose to keep his private life quiet. Only when he mentioned it in interviews did audiences realize the truth: a superhero on screen, an indomitable martial artist brought to his knees by such a personal loss. That death not only broke White's heart but also revealed a chapter of his life few had seen. A Michael Jai White not as a hero, but as a helpless father. What made the tragedy more haunting was its tie to The Secret at 15. The son was the living proof of that reckless turning point. And now, with his death, White had to face the reality that the past always leaves its mark. No matter his fame, no matter his rise to the heights of Hollywood, he could not alter his son's fate. It was a cruel paradox, strong and unstoppable on screen, yet powerless before family tragedy. Fans once remembered White as the comedic Black Dynamite, the superhero Spawn, or the formidable fighter with 7 black belts. But after hearing this story, they were forced to see him differently. No longer the untouchable idol, but a man with a bleeding heart. And perhaps this explains why White has become increasingly blunt and sharp in his words, having endured pain beyond compare. He has nothing left to hide. This may well be the family secret that shocked fans the most, because it not only exposed White's personal grief, but also underscored the fragility of human life, even for those who once stood at the pinnacle of strength. Michael Jai White may be able to deliver a spinning kick to fell an opponent, but he could not kick away fate. And his son's death in the midst of a global pandemic etched that truth into him like a scar that will never fade. Verbal clash with Steven Seagal and Hollywood Michael Jai White, with his blunt personality, has never shied away from speaking his truth. And when he locked horns with one of the most controversial icons, Steven Seagal, the entertainment world immediately erupted. This was not just a personal feud, but a shocking expose that made many re-examine the true face of martial arts in Hollywood. The story began in the early 2000s when Seagal was a huge name with his action films inspired by Aikido. Seagal had invited White 3 times to join his film project on Deadly Ground. For many young actors, this would have been a golden opportunity. But White was different. He flatly refused. The reason: the scripts were too nonsensical, lacking logic, and uninspiring. In a conversation with Vlad TV, White was even more direct. "Those were stupid scripts. I didn't want to waste my time." The remark was like a slap in the face to Seagal, a man known for arrogance and for presenting himself as a master martial artist. The conflict didn't stop there. In a recent Jackson podcast, White once again openly criticized Seagal. He said bluntly, "Steven Seagal has never been a real fighter. All he's ever done is wave his arms around on screen. In my life, I've never seen Seagal take a real punch." Those harsh words split the martial arts community and fans in two. Some applauded in agreement while others were outraged, claiming White had been disrespectful. But remember, White is not just an actor who knows martial arts. He holds 7 black belts, has taught since a young age, and has decades of real fighting experience. When White said Seagal wasn't a real fighter, he was speaking from expertise. Aikido, Seagal's discipline, has often been criticized as lacking combat application and being heavy on performance. With his tough personality, White did not hesitate to expose that. This was not the only time White stirred waves with his peers. He once hinted that many martial arts actors in Hollywood were more about acting than actual fighting. According to White, American cinema had created too many paper fighters, names made famous by editing and effects, not by true skill. His stance sparked major debate. In Hollywood, keeping the peace is often as important as talent, but White didn't care. He was willing to offend in order to speak the truth. Behind those sharp words perhaps lay deep-seated frustration. White had devoted his life to martial arts training, sweating, and even bleeding for his craft. Yet in Hollywood, he often saw people celebrated solely for their looks and carefully staged performances. To White, that was injustice. His public clash with Seagal was the breaking point, a wake-up call to the industry. Audiences deserve to know the truth. Not every action star is a real martial artist. The consequences of his words were not small. Some producers labeled White difficult to work with. Seagal and his fans openly attacked White online. Yet at the same time, he earned respect from the traditional martial arts community, people who understood the value of real combat and admired his honesty. Several martial arts instructors on YouTube even released videos analyzing and agreeing with White's view that Seagal's strength existed only on film. It can be said that the verbal battle with Seagal was one of the loudest secrets in Michael Jai White's career. It exposed the underlying rift in the world of action cinema. On one side, real fighters like White. On the other, glamorous stars who survived only under the spotlight. And once again, Michael Jai White appeared not as someone who stayed silent, but as a warrior willing to point fingers and call names. That is why people both love and fear White. Love him because he speaks the truth. Fear him because that truth is bitter enough to shake the idols they worshipped. Yet it is precisely this candor that sets White apart, a man who does not live on flattery, but on belief in truth and martial ethics. And so, beyond the punches on screen, Michael Jai White once again delivered a punch in real life. A punch of words aimed straight at faces once thought untouchable in Hollywood. A punch without blood, but powerful enough to make the entire entertainment industry tremble. The legal secret: custody battle. If verbal clashes with colleagues only stirred Hollywood, then legal turmoil in his private life directly shook Michael Jai White's public image. For this was no longer a matter of rumor, but a court record. A real ruling, a legal milestone exposing another shadow in the action star's life. In 2019, White lived with Ashley Reeder. They had a child together. At first it seemed like a peaceful new chapter, but only a few years later everything cracked. When love faded, arguments dragged on, and in the end, a custody battle erupted. In her filing to an Arizona court, Reeder accused White of reckless driving while transporting their child. She described a chilling scene: White swerving and roaring behind the wheel, forcing other drivers to swerve away, nearly causing a serious accident. Not only that, she claimed White often lost his temper, was aggressive and out of control during interactions, leaving her fearful for their child's safety. Faced with such accusations, the court could not ignore them. After hearings, the judge decided to significantly reduce White's custodial time, granting primary custody to Reeder. The ruling emphasized, the evidence shows that Mr. White's behavior placed the child in dangerous situations. For a father, especially a star who always projected a strong image, this was like a knife cutting into his pride. Michael Jai White did not accept it. He immediately appealed, insisting he was misunderstood, that the incident was only a temporary lapse. But in 2024, the Arizona Court of Appeals upheld most of the decisions, confirming that White must comply with restricted custody. This time, there was no room for compromise. On legal documents, White was deemed a father not safe enough to have full custody of his child. The story was quickly exploited by the press. Entertainment outlets, long familiar with White's invincible on-screen persona, now had a chance to flip the script. Michael Jai White, the martial artist with 7 black belts, defeated in the most important fight of all, fatherhood. Sensational headlines proliferated, turning the custody case into a stain on his personal record. Yet behind the tabloid covers lay a harsher truth. Michael Jai White, who had already lost his eldest son to COVID-19, now faced the possibility of being estranged from another child because of a court order. Tragedy upon tragedy. Once again, fate seemed to strike at his weakest point: fatherhood. Perhaps what shocked audiences most was not only the details of the case, but the bitter contrast. On screen, White embodied heroes who protected their families, fought evil, and braved danger. In real life, the legal system itself concluded he could not protect his own child. A painful paradox, but one that could not be denied. After the case, White rarely mentioned the details, maintaining near total silence. He focused on his career, continued acting, and kept up his tough demeanor. But for those aware of the custody battle, Michael Jai White's image would forever be tied to a stormy legal chapter in his life. The man behind the spotlight, throughout Michael Jai White's 3-decade journey, audiences have seen him in every kind of role, from the pioneering superhero Spawn to the cold-blooded fighter in Undisputed 2 to the comedic martial artist in Black Dynamite. But when we piece his life together, we uncover another script, one no Hollywood screenwriter could have imagined: a chain of light and shadow, glory and lost, strength and fragility. On screen, Michael Jai White is invincible. He delivers spectacular spinning kicks, hammer-like punches, and cold stares that make opponents falter. Audiences hailed him as an icon, the black hero who paved the way for future African-American actors. Hollywood may have been cautious, but it could not deny White had carved his name into the history of action cinema. Yet in real life, that hero repeatedly fell in battles without scripts. At 15, he became a father, carrying a lifetime of heavy responsibility. Later, his marriage to Dr. Courtney Chapman collapsed under the shadow of infidelity, tying his name to scandal for years. Then came the tragedy of losing his son to COVID-19, a pain no punch could ever match. And finally, the custody trial with Ashley Reeder, where a judge bluntly ruled Michael Jai White is not safe enough to be granted full custody of his child. Each chapter of his life is a scar, but it is precisely these scars that reveal the true portrait of Michael Jai White. He is not an immortal idol nor a flawless model. He is human, a man who has erred, betrayed, lost, and fallen. And perhaps that is why he feels closer to the audience, because none of us are invincible. Some say his bluntness makes White dangerous in Hollywood. He dared to criticize, Steven Seagal dared to expose the paper fighters of action cinema. But that bluntness combined with his private tragedies shaped a Michael Jai White who is raw and distinct. He no longer needs glamour to prove himself. He only needs to live true to who he is and to his audience, those who have followed him from his first punch to his uncertain steps into fatherhood. Today in his 50s, Michael Jai White still makes films, still teaches martial arts, and still maintains an enviable physique. He has been married to actress Jillian Ileana Waters since 2015 and built a new home. Yet the past lingers like a shadow at his back. He does not deny it nor try to erase it. He chooses to live with it, accepting it as part of the journey. Perhaps to some, those dark secrets have dimmed the glow of an action star. But if we look deeper, we see they are what make his light more genuine, more human, and more enduring. For light only has meaning when contrasted with darkness. Michael Jai White, a hero on the silver screen, but in real life, a man battered mercilessly by fate. And when all is said and done, one final question still lingers, dramatic and haunting, like a challenge to the audience. Can we still admire a hero once we know all of his darkest secrets? If you want to keep uncovering shocking stories and hidden truths no one dares to mention, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. And leave a comment below. What about Michael Jai White shocked you the most? We'll feature the most interesting responses in our next video.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.